Okay, good morning. This is Mariana and Pablo, and we're here in Flore, which is a very, very nice coffee shop here in the north of Merida. And we're here to talk about a lot of topics that I feel like a lot of clients have regarding litigation in Mexico. As you know, I don't do litigation, but here Pablo is an expert in litigation matters. And especially when clients move to Mexico, they want to either build a property and the typical, like I paid an architect and he never showed up, or I maybe bought into some kind of development and they didn't comply. And especially also the renting part. So we're going to talk about a few topics, but I always like to start, I feel like, understanding why somebody does something. It's always nice to know. So Pablo, I would like to know a little bit what led you to litigation? Because like I said, I don't do litigation, but what led you to litigation?
Thank you for the invitation, Mariana. When I started working with a cousin of an uncle of mine who litigated a criminal law and a little bit of civil and commerce law when I was in the first semester of the university. And that's how I started in the litigation, basically because my first boss was a litigant. And I started like seeing notary matters, but I didn't like the public notary part.
Yeah.
It wasn't my thing. My thing was being on trial and that stuff, and that's why I started in litigation.
So you like the action of the trial.
Yeah. I like to be in the field.
That's nice. It's nice. And it's nice to have someone that represents you that loves doing that, because maybe the litigation section you're used to in the country where you're coming is very different to litigation here. Like you have to be really patient, right, with litigation here.
I always say you need to know the law, but most important, you need to know the judge and their criteria when they resolve any matter.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's really nice. So anyway, we're also going to leave the details of Pablo below. So if you need any help here, especially in Yucatan, where also do you work? Do you work just in Yucatan?
No, I have people in Campeche, Quintana Roo, Mexico City, Monterrey,
Perfect.
Guadalajara, and all the major cities.
Perfect. There you go. So I'm going to leave the details below just in case you want to check it out, and he can be your savior in those matters here. Perfect. So we're going to deal with some questions here. A topic that a lot of clients ask us, which is something that actually people that they come from Mexico City say, it's so weird in Merida that everybody wants to sign something called convenio transaccional de desocupación y entrega, which is kind of a way to solve a matter for in the future, to have someone leave your house, because everybody's used to the lease agreement. Mm-hmm. But they say in Yucatan, everybody wants to sign that contract, and some people don't understand why. So could you tell us a little bit the difference between just a normal contract and that type of convenio de desocupación in matters of litigation?
Yeah. The convenio transaccional is just a document that prevents a future dispute between the people who signed the document. Basically, you accept that you are occupying a house without any legal right to it, and you are willing to evacuate the house in a certain date. Contrary to the leasing agreement, to a leasing contract, whereas it is registered in the Registro Público, in the public registry of property in Yucatan, the convenio is cheaper. You can do it before you can do it in a legal document before a public notary, and there are still a few public notaries that will put their signature in your own document. It's cheaper than the leasing contract. You don't have to register it in the public registry, and people who lease their house do not usually pay the taxes. Mm-hmm. So it's a matter of costs, to be honest. And in the litigation part, if the occupant doesn't comply with the leasing contract, you have to start a trial which will last approximately like maybe 2 years in the first instance. it's a whole trial. If the sentence doesn't benefit you, you can appeal it, and it goes to the superior justice court. If it doesn't benefit you as once again, then you go to the federal court, and the convenio transaccional in the last clauses. It is stipulated that the contract itself, that the convenio itself, it's going to serve like a sentence. So there is no appeal, there's no amparo, which is similar to the habeas corpus in the United States. You just go before a judge with your convenio and ask the judge to give the other party a 3-day period for them to comply with the convenio. It's either pay what you owe or get out of the house. Yeah.
Wow, so we're talking about a difference of like with a lease contract, it can take up to 2 years or more.
Yeah.
But with a convenio, it could take about
Maybe 8 months, because and the great part of those 8 months is the part where you ask the governor of Yucatan to sign the use of the police for the
for force, no?
for the
Wow.
for
Yeah,
Yeah.
to evacuate forcefully,
Yeah.
the house. Yeah, because even with the lease, you can't just go in and I want you to leave the house. No, the renter has or the occupant has some kind of rights as well, right? So it's not like that. But it's good to know, right? I feel like that's a reason why a lot of people here that have properties like using the convenio transaccional, right?
Yeah. It's stipulated in the civil law. A transaction is just an agreement between two parties to prevent a future potential dispute. Yeah.
Perfect. One of the questions that a lot of people have, and especially I have a client that it just happened that she contacted us because she said she had been paying, she has that convenio, she signed it with the owner, she's the renter or the occupant, and she was saying, the owner didn't come to give me my pagaré back or my promissory notes, because along with the convenio de desocupación, you sign promissory notes for the amount of the rent. So every time you pay, they will give you back a promissory note. But she was saying, I've been paying electronically and they haven't given me 6 promissory notes and I'm leaving soon. And what do I do, So I actually contacted Pablo and he had, it's a question that a lot of people have. What do I need to have in mind as the occupant in a rent that has a convenio transaccional, especially with the promissory notes?
You need to make sure that the owner of the house gives you your promissory notes in the very same moment that you make a payment, because due to the nature of the promissory note, it's an autonomous document. It doesn't need to be related at all to any other transaction. So even if you pay your rent, in the end, if you have any kind of problem or trouble with the owner and they don't give your promissory notes back and they have them in their with them, they can execute them, the promissory notes, before a commerce judge, and start a trial against you.
That's very serious because you have the convenio in one side, which this is okay. You promise that you're going to leave at a certain point. You're going to, leave the house, but then unrelated, you have these promissory notes that if you don't get them back, they could go and say, oh, this person owes me money.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be related to the contract, right?
Yeah, and the promissory notes are signed once again when you sign the convenio and you don't put any amount of rent. There is another clause that says that the convenio itself is going to have an early termination if you owe the owner money of from any of any way. If you owe them by whatever reason you owe them money, the convenio is going to be terminated before its real date. So they
Dangerous.
can even if you pay the whole rent, or if they keep your promissory notes, they can execute it and keep all your stuff.
That's crazy. And so, like, for example, for this renter or this occupant, this client, she was paying electronically, right? Because, like, for example, I have a property, I use promissory notes and a convenio with the person who's occupying, and he pays me in cash. Like he pays me in cash, I give him the promissory note. It's safer, right?
Yeah.
In person. But what if the contract says, and because this contract did, that she's going to send anything electronically, and she does? What happens? Like, can she take a screenshot of the electronic transfer and say it was from the pagaré? If she doesn't have the pagaré, how does that work if you go to litigation?
My advice would be if the owner of the house doesn't live here or where the property is, and you're going to pay electronically with a promissory note, with a signed promissory note, my advice would be in the concept of the wire transfer, put it that it's for the payment of the promissory note or the pagaré number 9/12. Just relay the payment to the promissory note, because in the end, if there's any litigation at all, you have your proof that the wire transfer was the concept of the wire transfer was the payment of the promissory note.
That's good to know, because it really happens, and then in this case the owner in the end gave the pagares back, no problem. But what if not, right? And I think you mentioned also the amount has to be exact. Like,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, because going back to what I said, the promissory note, the pagaré, isn't related to any other activity at all or any commercial transaction unless you specify it in the very same pagaré. So in the end, if the pagares are for 5,000 pesos and you make a transfer, a 5,000 pesos transfer or a 5,000 cash deposit in a convenience store, and isn't related to the pagaré itself, the person, the renter, can say that it was from a random person or another transaction. So my advice would be put it the date of the pagaré, the amount of the pagaré, the number of the pagaré, everything. So in the end, it's as related as possible.
Perfect. What if I am the owner? What is the best for me? A lease agreement or the convenio transaccional?
It depends on who are you renting it to. If you're going to rent it to a person for them to live for a year or maybe 2 or even 3 years, my advice would be use the convenio. It's cheaper. It's up to you if you want to pay taxes on it, and if the occupant doesn't come through with their obligations, which is basically paying the rent each month and keeping the house in a good shape, good shape.
Good shape.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Good shape.
And you need to execute the contract, the convenio, it's way faster than the leasing. Whereas the leasing, maybe if you have a property, a commerce property designated to a property designated to commerce, maybe the occupant, whether it's maybe an OXXO convenience store or a 7-Eleven, maybe they are not willing to sign the leasing, well, the rent using a convenio, and they prefer a leasing contract. But for the owner, my advice would be a convenio.
Yeah, and I feel like, because honestly, with a person that's just renting, maybe you don't know who they are.
Yeah.
You know, but maybe a company, I mean, they're more structured. There's more, whatever, ways to go and get,
Yeah.
maybe, I don't know,
Yeah.
responsibility back.
You have an assurance that you're going to come through with the whole contract. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So one of the other things that a lot of the clients ask us, Pablo, is about, especially when they purchase in Mexico, now they get an architect, they're super excited. Actually happened to my family members when they moved here from Netherlands, and they gave the money and they were like, yeah, like it's gonna happen, and then the architect falls through.
Yeah.
And he never continues. And that's been a problem with a lot of our clients. What happens there? What would you give us as a suggestion to have as documents to be able, from the beginning, right? The moment you hire an architect, what do you keep in hand to be able to go after them or make them comply, if at all possible?
A contract, a professional services contract with penalties for both parties. Just make sure the contract is signed in every single page, because in the United States it's common or typical to have an electronic signature, and here in Mexico the electronic signature is in the law, it exists, but I've seen that a lot of clients send me like a scan of a document, that it doesn't work that way here in Mexico. The signature must be, if it's going to be signed with your signature, with your handwritten signature, you need to have the original signature. If you're going to sign a contract electronically, you need to use a specialized software following the NOM, which is the official Mexican norm. And just make sure you have everything signed. And if a trial needs to be, if you need to go before trial, you have your document, which is the contract. And in the trial, during the trial, you need to prove that the other party didn't comply with with their obligations, and you need to prove that you came through with your obligations.
Exactly. Yeah. That's interesting, because normally when you hire an architect, maybe you didn't come. The ideal thing is to come and see them in person, see what they've done, right? Because it's nothing simple. But normally they will just send you electronically, sign it without using DocuSign or anything like that. Just sign it, send it, scan it, and then we'll sign it. But that doesn't work. This is what Pablo's saying. The best thing would be maybe to DHL it, like you sign it, DHL, that way it's like wet ink, or to have like DocuSign. I don't know how DocuSign works. Something like that, right?
Yeah.
Regarding costs, because I not more like legal fees of attorneys, but I always have clients. Maybe you come from a country where it's really easy to go against people, and you want to sue everybody. Like, I want to sue this person, honestly, right? Like, what quantity would you say it's actually worth it to fight that you gave them? Let's say, I don't know, you gave them 100,000 pesos, or you gave them 50,000 pesos. Which amount is worth it to start fighting, and which should you just be like, no?
If it's going to be through a legal process, I mean, as a lawyer, my advice would be, if it's going to be from maybe 50 or 60,000 pesos up, we can try and sort something out, because the quantity isn't like a lot, and how much am I going to my fee? What's going to be my fee for a quantity which is like 50,000 pesos? Especially if it's going to be like a long trial. If we're talking about either a contract with an architect, or maybe a leasing contract that wasn't complied, it's going to be a 2-year trial.
Minimum, right?
Yeah. So my advice would be from 50,000 up. Maybe if it's a lower, a smaller quantity, maybe go to the Profeco, which is the Consumer Federal Defendant.
Yeah, exactly. We'll put the name down.
Yeah, and they are going to notify the other party, in this case the architect, that someone put a complaint against them, and the Profeco is going to have a meeting between both parties, and they are mediators. If an agreement isn't reached, they're going to tell you that you can do whatever legal action you want to.
Exactly. Last question, Pablo. This, I think, could be a question for some people, especially if you're a resident or a tourist in Mexico. Like, can I still go through a trial if I'm a tourist or a resident? Doesn't matter, right?
Yeah, you can sue someone, or someone can sue you. It doesn't matter if you are a resident, a tourist, a citizen. Perfect. Doesn't matter.
Also, here I have my matcha. Also, one of the questions that I feel like I have more than anything is, what are some of the most, I would say, sought out trials for foreigners here in Yucatan? What do they call you more for?
They call me when they are renting a house, when they are the occupants of a house, or maybe they bought a land or a house which is still being under construction, and the other party doesn't comply, whether the constructor didn't even start the construction of the house, or maybe the occupant isn't paying them, and that's what the foreigners contact me the most. Yeah.
Yeah, like I feel like, especially with developers, a lot of the construction matters or investing matters here are some of the reasons why I contact Pablo to maybe give him or give them the number of a client because they're not really careful sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have any example, of course, without names,
Yeah.
of how someone can make a really bad decision of trying to invest in Mexico without good advice.
Yeah, I have two examples of that. The last year I was contacted by many, not foreigners, but Mexicans who live in the United States and Canada. They bought from a developer a townhouse located between, in the middle of Merida and Progreso. And the developer didn't even begin the construction. And when I'm going to be, I am seeing, I am taking care of the trials to get their money back. It was a 2-year period when they started paying, and the townhouse was supposed to be complete in 2 years, and they didn't even start. Yeah, and another example of a foreigner contacting me is two married people here in Merida. They died, and they have their property downtown through a fideicomiso, a trust, and both died. There isn't any will. No, there is a will in the United States. I'm sorry, there is a will in the United States, and the beneficiary of the will are two universities. So I'm seeing, for the first time, to be honest, the process of the bank who owns the fideicomiso. So this is something new for me to see if they're going to recognize the executor of the will and that as the person who is in charge of the state of the deceased people. So those are the most. Yeah.
And it could happen, right? That's what in the fideicomisos we normally put the beneficiaries.
Yeah.
So it's good to be protected. Like it's not just I'm buying a property. Ooh, that's it. No, it's good to think about the future and to get help from a litigation attorney, especially when it comes to having doing a will process here in Mexico. It's very different to other countries because we have to go through a trial, even if you have a will.
Yeah.
So it's good to know and to contact somebody that knows about it. But yeah, I mean, it happens a lot, and we've talked about this, me and Pablo, about how it's important to always make sure to not just, put your money in somewhere, like you said, with people with the townhouses. Sometimes we have clients that sign on a contract without even coming to Mexico, without even checking with an attorney. And then they come after and they're like, oh, I need help. And of course, Pablo's there to help you. He can definitely help you with those things. But it's always good to I feel like, look at the litigation attorneys like a way to prevent, I feel like, right? Like if I'm trying to do something and I know that there could be a problem, I would go with Pablo and be like, hey, how can I avoid this?
Yeah.
Why not, right? I mean, in the end, you want to avoid it, but then at least you know that if something happens, there's someone that can help you with those matters. So anyway, I want to thank you so much, Pablo, for giving us a lot of your knowledge. It's super interesting. Honestly.
Thank you, Mariana, for the invitation, for inviting me.
No, you're welcome. And tell us, please, how can people contact you in case they need help with any of those litigation matters?
They can send me a WhatsApp message or contact me by phone.
Perfect. So we're gonna leave his number right there, and if you need any help with that, make sure to contact him, and make sure to also like this video if you want to subscribe. And we're trying to just make legal matters easier for anybody who is trying to invest here, and just to make your investment something to be proud of and happy, right? Because that's the point of investing. Okay? Bye. Thank you.